and that's what I want to do. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, and I know that I had a lot of people praying for me, and I thank all of you for doing that as well. And Pat does the same, because she had a lot of prayers for her to serve her situation. We appreciate that very much. So with that, let's start, and we'll start everything by singing my favorite song, In the Garden.
What page is it?
40.
It's page 40. Yeah, I'm sorry, page 40, In the Garden. me.
Hello,
I had
Father.
planned a split sermon, so I just went ahead and was able to get up.
You can go to the low one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Dave ready?
What?
Is Dave ready?
Oh, Dave, are you ready back there?
I've already been filming.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, today what I've chosen to speak on is something that is extremely important for all of us. And especially now that we have a new one that's thinking about, coming into the church very shortly. And that is, are we keeping the Sabbath pleasing to God? This is the question I want each and every one of us to ask ourselves today. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how I think I should keep the Sabbath. It doesn't matter how you think you should keep the Sabbath. It really doesn't matter how any man thinks you should keep the Sabbath. All that really matters is how God thinks we should keep the Sabbath. That's what we have to be concerned with. That is the only thing that matters, is how we keep from God. Is it pleasing to God? And the reason I've chosen the subject today is, even though most of us have been in the church for years, is that we're typical Israelites, aren't we? We tend to start to keep the Sabbath our way instead of God's way. That's because we all have human nature, don't we? We just need to take the time to evaluate the way we're keeping the Sabbath, because our relationship, our personal relationship with God, is greatly going to be affected by the way we keep His Sabbath. While preparing the sermon, the thought occurred to me that maybe one of the reasons that we are having so many problems, so much sickness, and divisions within God's churches, is that we are not keeping the Sabbath in a way that is pleasing to Him. Think about it. We need to think on and examine the way we're keeping His holy day. He said that the seventh-day Sabbath was an identifying sign to His people. We read that in Exodus 31, verse 13, where it says, "Speak also to the children of Israel, saying, Truly you shall keep my Sabbath. For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, to know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you." Today many of God's churches are sending out CDs and DVDs. Now we even have our YouTube service, which are being given by many ministers and leaders in God's churches. But the problem is because, we think, why do I need to go to church on the Sabbath? I can just stay at home and keep the Sabbath there. And now, if you're keeping the Sabbath at home, and you're inviting others over to your home, and this is great, because, it doesn't matter what building we're keeping the Sabbath in. All that really matters is that we're keeping the Sabbath properly in a way that it's going to be good. Unless, of course, that building might be filled with idols. That would not be good. But so what about keeping Sabbath at home alone? Or just with our mate? The great thing about doing this, especially if you have a DVD or watcher, you can just flip the YouTube out, which to me is even easier than DVDs, is not only do you hear the speaker, but it's like you get to watch him. And really, in fact, unless you're able to sit in the front row at church, you might even see it better on the TV. So, we know that we can have fellowship with God right at home. And we can do this because He says in His Word that where two or more are gathered in His name, He is there with them. We read that in Matthew 18:20. So there's no question about it. Fellowship with God is the most important thing for us to have on the Sabbath. No question about that. But the question is, what about our fellowship with the called members of the body of Christ? Our brothers, our sisters in God's church. The question becomes, is keeping the Sabbath at home, by yourself or with your mate, good or bad? Let me start by saying this. I feel keeping the Sabbath, church at home, can be a very good thing. In fact, one of God's churches, the Christian Biblical CBCG, has a website titled Church at Home. The minister, Fred Kohler, said he had spoken with so many people who were totally turned off on worldly churches and their practices and their teaching. And these people were trying to study their Bible to learn God's truth. And it obviously wasn't being taught in their local Protestant or Catholic churches. So they were discouraged and so left the church and were staying at home, trying to worship God on their own. The trouble was, they just didn't know how. Thus the need for a source, a way to reach and teach these people God's truth, and the websites and DVDs called Church at Home were developed. And also they could write in and request for free literature and broadcast to help them with their Bible studies. And it's been a big success. Once the people learned some of God's truth, it was hoped they would want to meet with other of God's people on Sabbath, and many of them did. But you know now what's happening? In fact, we know people. You know, we were with that group for quite a while. We have friends in that group. And many of them will not go to church. No need. They just want to stay home and listen to friends. They don't even want to hear anybody. And that, to me, is sort of sad. And then, of course, they're not the only one. CBCG is not the only one of God's churches making keeping the Sabbath at home possible. The Church of God Ministries International, COGMI, as well as some others, are producing and sending out DVDs, sermons, Bible studies, special programs to anyone who requests them. So we see that keeping the Sabbath at home has become easier and easier. And truly, we're making it easier and easier too, aren't we? Now we have the YouTube. And to me, that's even easier and much more convenient to watch a DVD. And so it's great to be able to just sit at home, flip on the TV, or your computer, or watch YouTube. It's simple. And we do. If we go back, we have all sorts of booklets and pamphlets and things that people request. Manny has done a great job in writing many great books that can be a big help, especially to new people. And as you know, I recently, not too awful long, spent a whole month sitting in a chair with my foot elevated due to the amputation of part of my toe and not being able to go to church. So then being able to keep the Sabbath at home, watching sermons on YouTube and DVD, were great. It was wonderful. And I can assure you that being able to keep Sabbath at home is a great blessing for anyone who is physically unable to go to church. And thanks to DVDs, thanks to our YouTubes, that is possible. Now, also being able to keep the Sabbath at home, it can be great if you're in real financial difficulty and cannot afford, to drive to church, especially if your congregation is many miles away. Pat and I, one way is about 75 miles. And some that come here, I know it's more than that. So as already mentioned, for those just being called into God's truth, keeping Sabbath at home is a great benefit. In fact, I can give you a great example of a good friend of mine. It wasn't too long ago, a couple years ago, I had the privilege of helping to baptize him. And he's my neighbor, and we became very good friends from the day when I moved in. But anyway, we got teaching him about the Sabbath and about the holy days and keeping clean and unclean things. And I remember he got so excited about some of this truth, he just couldn't wait to get back to his Sunday school class and tell them all about it. And he went racing in, and boy, I tell you, they were so excited. Oh, were they ever excited about what he had to say? The only problem was they asked him never to come back. And most of them, of course, were his neighbors, and had been for years, and they wouldn't even talk to him anymore. They just were not that anxious to hear about the Sabbath, the truth, that they needed to quit doing away with Christmas and all those pagan holidays. Many of us can relate to maybe having such an experience ourselves. But even though, and that's why, at that time, Sabbath at home became very, very beneficial for him, and for many of us at the very beginning. But so, even though Being able to keep the Sabbath at home is a wonderful thing at times. If we're not careful, we can abuse this privilege. Why? Because it's just so easy, isn't it, to stay at home and not make an effort to go to church. And besides, look at all the money we save. You know, it's all the gas money, of course, we go to church, we normally eat out, we got all those bills. We save all that money and just sit at home. It's so great. So now back to the question. What about fellowship with our brothers and sisters in Christ? Is this really important? Let's read what happened during Peter's ministry. Let's go to Acts 2, verses 41 and 42, and verses 46 to 47. Verse 41. Then those who joyfully received Peter's message were baptized, and about 3,000 souls were added that day. Verse 42. And they steadfastly continued in the teaching of the apostles, and in the fellowship, and in the breaking of bread, and in prayers. Now drop down to verse 46. And every day, steadfastly continuing with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread in their houses, they partook of the food with gladness and sincerity of heart. 47. Praising God, and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church day by day those who were being saved. You know, these were people who heard God's truth through Peter's preaching. And they were rejoicing, and they were fellowshipping with each other. Which shows that God wants us to fellowship, because through fellowship, we get to know one another. And it's always in getting to know one another. Are we able then to share the things we need to know with each other, and then be able to pray for one another and help one another? Let's think about Christ's example for a moment. We know that he came to this earth to live a perfect life, and then to die for our sins. And we just need to repent, be baptized, have hands laid on us by one of God's ordained ministers who prays over us, asking God to give us His Holy Spirit. It is important to know that in order to receive God's Spirit in baptism, the laying on of hands, this must be done by one of God's true ordained ministers. Worldly ministers from any Protestant or Catholic church are not God's true ministers. And so they cannot baptize you in God's church. It can't be done. Christ did all of this, so we will have the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to overcome, and be in the kingdom, His kingdom someday. But is this all that He did? No. He spent most of His time preaching God's word and healing people. In fact, one of the primary purposes of Christ's life was to help others, to help all of mankind. You know, He lived a life that was an example for you and I to follow. And He even chose an occupation as a carpenter, built homes, and maybe even furniture for others, which, you know, that is definitely a career that you're helping people on. In fact, I know the man we have now building, he is great, and he has been such a great help. He's come up with tremendous ideas, and you can just tell he is so proud of all and he tells us about other places he did, and how happy that people are. It's a great feeling, and I can understand why God chose to be a carpenter, because there is a great reward in helping people and making people happy through your work. So now, back to our question. Is keeping Sabbath at home good or bad? The answer is that keeping the Sabbath at home can be wonderful. It is the way we do it that makes it good or bad. It's sort of like a pistol, you know? A pistol can be a great thing. It can be used to protect ourselves, to protect others, to protect our families, to protect our brothers and sisters in Christ or in the church, or anyone else who needs protection. And it's, I feel, probably going to become even more beneficial as time worsens and violence increases, as we know it's eventually going to happen. The commandment reads, "Thou shalt not murder." It does not say, "Thou shalt not kill." And we know there is a big, huge difference. It is not the gun that murders people. It is people who murder people. You know, we know especially the men It is their God-given responsibility for each one of us to protect our family. This is made clear in Matthew 24:43. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what watch the thief would come, he would have been watching, and he would not have allowed his house to be broken into. So it is definitely not the gun that is good or bad, but it is how we use it. And you know, the same is true with keeping the Sabbath at home. It is not the keeping the Sabbath at home that is good or bad. It is how we do it. We must remember is that even though fellowship with Christ and the Father is the most important fellowship of any Sabbath day, no question about it. Actually, in every day, we should have that fellowship. But fellowship with our brothers and with our sisters in Christ is also very important. Let's read this in Philippians 2, verses 2 through 5. Verse 2, fulfill my joy, that you be of the same mind, having the same love, being joined together in soul, minding the one thing. Let nothing be done through contention or vainglory, but in humility, each esteeming the other above himself. Verse 4, let each one look not only after his own thing, but let each one also consider the things of others. Verse 5, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So we see, in order to accomplish these things, we must get together with each other. No way to do it any other way. And you get to know, not only meet with spend time and get to know each other. And this can only be accomplished through fellowship. You know, one of the hardest things for us to do in this world, I believe, is getting away from strife and vainglory. One of the greatest helps in accomplishing this, I feel, is through fellowship with God's people and learning to love God. And this is what I feel Paul was talking about. These are some of the reasons we need to fellowship. We must learn to get along with each other if we are going to be rulers in God's kingdom. That's going to be one of the most important. How can we rule over people who can't get along with it? Another reason we need to fellowship with one another is to share our problems so that we can pray and help each other, both physically and spiritually. You might say that we can get all of this information over the phone or through emails. And everybody got their email now. But think about it. There is no way we can fellowship over the phone like we can do it in person, is there? Because when we fellowship in person, we fellowship with a lot more than our voice tone. We fellowship with our eyes. We fellowship with our emotions. And when somebody breaks into tears, and we can grab them, we can give them a hug. You just can't do that on the phone. And many times, that's exactly what that person needs. We use all sorts of gestures to show, their happiness and joy with them, or on the other thing, if they're having sorrow. And many times, when people are having a very strange situation, they really just need a shoulder to cry on, someone to listen to. And we need to be there for them. And we've already read this in Acts verse 2, verses 41 through 42, and verses 43 through 46. So even though these scriptures are referring to the gathering of people, there Peter's preaching, and many were baptized, and they continued, though, to gather for several days. And they were being taught the importance of fellowship and praying for each other daily. So, question, what are some of the other questions regarding keeping the Sabbath holy? Some of our brothers and sisters think we need to keep the Sabbath just the way they did in the Old Testament. That would be great, wouldn't it? But let's go to Exodus 20, and we'll see that it is impossible for us today to keep the Sabbath today exactly the way they were able to in Moses' time. Let's start in verse 8. Verse 8, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Now, no question about it. We can all do this, can't we? But how do we do this? We do this by keeping our mind focused on God and making it His day and not doing our own pleasure. means we don't go shopping on the Sabbath for things that are non-essential, for keeping the or for non-essential, for keeping the Sabbath. And this doesn't mean that you can't buy a meal on the Sabbath if you're away from home. But it does mean that we shouldn't go out and buy the week's supply of groceries on the Sabbath. No, we shouldn't be doing that. And for those who feel that eating out on the Sabbath is wrong, and the food should be prepared and brought with them to eat after service, I really think they need to ask anyone who has done this, which involves more work on the Sabbath. Going to a restaurant, or fixing food, packing it, carrying it, setting it out at church, and then cleaning it up afterwards. I think most women would agree that going out to eat is much less work. And this is especially true for those of us who have to travel a great distance for the Sabbath. However, if the person truly believes that eating is wrong, eating out on the Sabbath is wrong, then it is wrong for them to do it. And we should not criticize them for it. Now, you can buy gas for your car on the Sabbath. You know, if you're traveling long distance, get the Sabbath service. But you know, if possible, we should make our car try to get our car gassed up and ready to go by doing all of this on Friday, because Friday is the day of preparation. However, if services are so far away that you can't make it there and back on a tank of gas, then there is nothing wrong with buying the gas you need for the trip. Another thing that keeping the Sabbath holy means is that we shouldn't be watching sports games or our favorite TV shows on the Sabbath. You know, we can watch the news. God tells us to watch and to be alert to what is going on in this world. And we should be fellowshipping with our brothers. But even when we're fellowshipping with our brother, it should be in a holy manner. You know, we shouldn't be just discussing how great the Gators played last week. You know, that's not the type of fellowship we should be having on the Sabbath. Our focus should be on God and helping each other to be closer to God. We need to just constantly remember that the Sabbath is God's day, and we need to stay focused on Him. And you know, Satan knows that we are to stay focused on keeping the Sabbath throughout, and to be just focused on worshiping God. And you know, that is why he promotes sports, entertainment, buying and selling on Friday night. How many great sales are held on Saturday, right? And Saturday nights, he uses these to try and distract God's people from true worship of God. He even uses events on Sundays to keep the worldly churches from focusing on God, doesn't he? Think about it. All the major events like college, pro football, concerts, rodeos, NASCAR races, flea markets, big sales events, essentially, usually take place from Friday night through Sunday. Let's turn to Isaiah 58 to see what God says about doing our own pleasure on the Sabbath. Let's turn to verse 13. If you turn your foot away from the Sabbath, from doing your own desires on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him, nor doing your own ways, nor pursuing your own desires, nor speaking your own words, verse 14, then you shall delight yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to rise upon the high places of the earth, and feed you with the inheritance of Jacob your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. So this is God's promise. If we focus on Him, if we keep our Sabbath totally focused on pleasing Him, we will be rewarded for doing it. And that's a tremendous promise now from God, for keeping the Sabbath holy, and by not doing our own pleasure in our own work. So now let's continue in Exodus 20. Now let's read verses 9 and 10. Verse 9, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Verse 10, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, not any work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your maidservant, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your livestock, nor the stranger within your gates. So we see, this doesn't mean that you can't do the things you need to do to keep the Sabbath, such as carrying the things you need for services out to your car. Pat and I do try to carry everything out that we possibly can on Friday, get everything ready, but we can't take any food products out and put it in the car on Friday night because the bear would have it eaten and my car would probably be destroyed. But anyway, that's because we live in the national forest, so we can't load any food items ahead of time. But even so, when we get to church, we still have to do some things, don't we? We have to offload everything. We also have to arrange the tables and chairs and set up everything. The bottom line, though, is we only do those things that we have to do to keep the Sabbath church services as God wants us to do. We try to do as much as we can ahead of time. Now let's read Leviticus 23, verses 1 through 3. Verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, verse 2, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, concerning the appointed feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my appointed feasts. Verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath for rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. Any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwellings. So in reading the description of God's feast days in Leviticus 23, there are only 2 holy days where no work is to be done. Only 2. That's the weekly Sabbath and the Day of Atonement. All the rest of the holy days say that no servile work is to be done. Now, servile work means work in which you are paid to do. Okay? So food preparation is allowed, but it is not allowed on all those no work days, or Sabbaths, which are our weekly Sabbath, and it's not allowed on the Day of Atonement. And this is further explained in Exodus 12, verse 16. And in the first day of unleavened bread, there shall be a holy convocation, and the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation for you. No manner of work shall be done in them, except that which every man must eat. That only may be done by you. So we see that servile work excludes the preparation of food. However, no work means you are not allowed to do anything except only that which is to be done to keep the Sabbath. Remember that the priests in the Old Testament, they had to labor on the Sabbath, but it was not for wages. It was to conduct the worship of God. Now let's talk about emergencies, because unfortunately, emergencies happen even on the Sabbath, don't they? In fact, it seems like we're living in Satan's world, and Satan loves to make emergencies happen to us on the Sabbath day. So what do we do about that? Let's read Luke 14:5 to see what Christ said about handling something that is truly an emergency on the Sabbath. Verse 5. And he answered, he said to them, Who among you shall have a donkey or an ox fall into a pit, and will not immediately pull it out on the Sabbath day? So this is an important thing to remember. It must be really an emergency. Something that cannot wait for another day. You know, if something happens and something breaks and it can be fixed Sunday, let's just go wait and fix it the next day. But if it is something that you need to take care of right then, or like an animal or something that gets hurt, or a person, yes, you take care of that situation. So what does the Bible say about preparing ahead for the Sabbath? Let's look at the example of the Israelites' journey through the wilderness. Remember the story? The Israelites grew hungry and murmured against Moses. And they accused him of leading them out in the wilderness just so they could die of hunger. And so Moses called upon God for help. What do I do? So let's pick 16, verses 4 through 5. And then we'll read verses 22 through 23. Verse 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain amount every day, that I may prove them there that they will walk in my law or not. In verse 5. And it shall come to pass on the 6th day, they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather day by day. Verse 22. And it came to pass on the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Verse 23. And he said to them, This is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy day, holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today. Boil what you will boil. And that which remains over, lay up for yourself to be kept until the next morning. Now, in modern terms, an omer is 9.3 cups, or 3.64 liters. So 2 omers would be 18.6 cups, or 7.28 liters. Now, this is quite a bit of food for a person. And they were to gather the manna each morning so that they had to last them all day. Also, the manna must have been very nutritious. It had to contain everything they needed to stay healthy. And that is what God was providing for them. So, we see that God performed a miracle and gave them twice as much manna on the 6th day so they could prepare for the Sabbath. They were not to gather on the Sabbath, but they were to rest. And remember what happened if someone disobeyed and went out to gather. What did happen? They would find absolutely nothing out there on the Sabbath day. And also God told Moses to instruct them not to lay up for the next day. And any manna that they had gathered during the weekdays or days 1 through 5. They were to go out each morning and gather bread. But as always with this bread, some disobeyed. And they kept it until the next morning. And guess what happened? It bred worms and it decayed. It stank. And we read that in verses 19 through 21. Now, however, on the 6th day, they were to keep it over the Sabbath. And it did not get worm. And it did not stink. We see this was a miracle from God. And his way of showing how important the preparation for keeping the Sabbath day was. This was an example for us. Another example of the preparation day for the Sabbath, both annual and weekly, is given in the New Testament. Christ was crucified during the middle of the week on Wednesday. The next day, Thursday, was the annual holy day, or the first day of unleavened bread. This was followed by Friday, preparation day, and the weekly Sabbath. So there were 2 preparation days before Sabbath and 2 Sabbaths, annual and weekly. Let's see this in Luke 23, 54 through 56. Now it was a preparation day, and a Sabbath annual was coming on. Verse 55. And the women also who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and how the body was laid. Verse 56. And they returned to the city and prepared spices and ointments, and they rested on the Sabbath weekly according to the commandment. And also then in John 19:31. The Jews therefore, so that the bodies might not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, because it was a preparation day, for the Sabbath was a high day, requested of Pilate that their legs might be broken and the bodies be taken away. So we see, God in his wisdom and his mercy shows us in his written word that preparation for the Sabbath is very important in keeping the Sabbath day holy. So what does this mean for us today? Obviously, we need to prepare everything we can ahead of time on a Friday. The ladies should do their heavy cooking and baking on a Friday, not on the Sabbath. Washing and ironing should be done ahead of time. Shopping should always be done ahead of time. Things happen with company rates. You gotta go out and buy something on the Sabbath. You actually have to have it. But we should plan ahead and try to make sure that we don't have to do that. The men should is like, well, like last night, it was real cold, so I had to put them in their little house. And so I let them out of that house so they didn't have to be cramped up all. But that's all I had to do, just go out, unlatch the door and open it up and let them have some freedom. But we try to do everything we possibly can on the Friday, and only do those things that we absolutely have to do on the Sabbath. In other words, God is looking at our hearts and our attitudes. Are we looking forward to keeping a Sabbath day? Only do we? Is that really, have we think about all of it? We should. We should be doing everything we can all week long to make sure that we can really just, as much as humanly possible, make the Sabbath day God's day and keep our focus totally on Him. And we should be eager and looking forward to gathering with His people, and the fellowshipping with His people as well as with God, the Father and the Son both. We know they come to be with us whenever we are gathered. So we need to understand that we have to do a lot more things on the Sabbath day than the people had to do in the Old Testament time. And the reason is the circumstances are entirely different today. It is important for us to keep the Sabbath, and God wants us so that when we are together on the Sabbath, the Spirit of God will be with us, and God will be guiding us in His way. That's what we need to be striving for. We need to also remember that we have something that they didn't have back in the biblical time. Yes, they didn't have years ago the Bible, which we have. Let's read verses 11 in Exodus 20. Verse 11. For it is 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the seventh day, and He sanctified it. He made it special. Now let's read also in Deuteronomy 5, verses 12 through 14. Verse 12. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Verse 14. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. Underline any. It's so important to remember that. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your maidservant, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your livestock, nor your stranger within your gate, so that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. We see that there are some differences that are really brought out in Deuteronomy 5, verse 12, that were not brought out in Exodus 20. In Deuteronomy 5, we see that your maidservant and your manservant have been included in the Sabbath rest. Most of us might say, I don't have any servants. But we really do, don't we? We have vehicles, we have stoves, dishwashers, AC, heating units, light washers and dryers, microwaves. But the thing about them is they are not human, are they? So they are all machines and automated, so they are incapable of breaking the Sabbath. However, we are capable of using those things and breaking the Sabbath, aren't we? So, it's how we use these mechanical servants on the Sabbath that is what we have to worry about. Is using them right or wrong? Now, how about our car? It's my servant, right? But I had to use it, and probably everybody here had to use a vehicle to get here. Most of us would be impossible if we did. So again, it's how we use it. It's how, we got to remember, is this something God would want us to do? Here. Now, if I use the car to go to the football game, that's using it in a long way on a Saturday. Some of us, in fact, I think some of the people down south, they drive over 100 miles one way to get there. So it'd be impossible for them to be here if they did not use their vehicle. But biblical times, we got to remember, they didn't have to worry about those things because they were able to because they had temples very close to him. And this is why it is impossible for us today to keep the Sabbath exactly like they were able to keep it back in biblical times. You know, the most important thing is that we try to keep Sabbath in a way that pleases the Father and Christ, not any man. We don't have to worry about what any man, I don't care if they're a preacher or who they are. If they're a man, you don't have to worry about what they think. What you have to be concerned is what God the Father and Christ think. And they know our only Father. You know, we can fool people. We're normally pretty good at that, aren't we, as human beings? But we cannot fool God, and we cannot fool Christ. There's no way. So I ask you, have you ever gone to Sabbath service where they were centered around just exalting a man, following the corporate orders, or having infighting within the leaders and the brethren? And I ask you this, if so, how was your Sabbath? Was it a delight? I think if we're honest, that was the situation. It was not very good, was it? How many times have you gone home feeling more down and depressed, leaving Sabbath service, than when you arrived? Have you ever awakened to the feeling of dreading, absolutely dreading having to go to Sabbath service? You know you are supposed to go. You know you're supposed to worship God. So you drag yourself out of bed, get dressed, and you go. You think this is pleasing to God? I don't think so. Then when you get to services, you feel it is totally unbeneficial. In fact, maybe you arrived at church feeling good, feeling great, with a great outlook, only to go up after maybe have a bad argument, having people talk about you in the wrong way, and you go home feeling negative and in a bad attitude. Has this ever happened to you? I'm afraid most of us have been in the church for years that it has happened. And the sad part, many times it's happened more than once. Most of us who are worldwide church of God experienced all these things, and unfortunately experienced many times. And even after leaving the worldwide church of God, meeting with other church of God groups, we still have had to experience the same things happen. Even though we're trying to keep God's command, we're trying to assemble together, it really wasn't beneficial to us. Or at least not very much. In fact, all of these things that happen to us are like living under a dark cloud sometimes. You know, it's helpful. What we see here is that we are to keep the Sabbath holy, fighting and victory, trying to please men and follow corporate rules are not keeping the Sabbath holy and are not pleasing to God. This whole emphasis is on pleasing men, not pleasing God. And most of the time, what is the arguing and bickering about? Because somebody's ego lays out hurt. They wanted to be in charge, afraid somebody else is maybe getting them more recognition than they're getting themselves. Or thinking people are looking towards them instead of somebody else. It's horrible. It should not be occurring with God's people who are planning to be the rulers of tomorrow. That's like Washington, D.C., isn't it? That's the way our leaders are there, and why our nation is in such trouble, because of the bickering and the fighting and the egos instead of the caring for the people. And this needs to be honest. We should not be worried about what people think. We should not be worried about being in control. God is in control. If we're having a man in control, we're in the wrong place. We need to be having God in control of our church services, right? Our emphasis definitely needs to be on pleasing God in Christ and not man. So now let's talk about some things regarding keeping the Sabbath holy. Let's go to Nehemiah 13, verses 14 through 17. Verse 14, remember me, O my God, concerning this, and do not wipe out my good deeds, which I have done for the house of God and for for the offices of it. Verse 15. In those days I saw in Judah some treading winepresses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sacks of grain, and loading donkeys, and also wine, grapes, and figs, and all the kinds of burdens which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I abolished them on the day in which they sold food. And men of Tyre dealt therein, who brought fish and all kinds of goods, and sold them on the Sabbath to the children of Judea and in Jerusalem. In verse 17, and I contended with the nobles of Judea, and said to them, what evil thing is it that you do and defile the Sabbath day? So let's look at it. Let's ask some questions. First of all, how big was the area of Judea? You know, it was a very small area. In fact, even at that time, Jerusalem was a very small city. And as I've already mentioned, they didn't hardly have to travel anywhere to keep the Sabbath, did they? They had synagogues that were in walking distance for everybody. So in this case, the Jews were bringing the whole world to them. They were buying and selling products. The key thing here is that they were engaging in work. They were buying and selling or engaging in commerce on the Sabbath day. It was their occupation. And this is what was wrong. You know, today, we live in a totally opposite world, don't we? That's why they were able to shut the gates, put guards up to make sure no buying and selling took place on the Sabbath. We can't do that. No possible way can we do that. We can't control what's going on in the world around us. We can only control our own actions. That's all we have control over. So let's see what took place in Jesus' day. Let's go to Mark 2, verse 23. Now it came to pass, they went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and as the disciples made their way to the field, they were picking and eating the grain. Now Jesus didn't stay in Jerusalem and do nothing on the Sabbath. There were synagogues in Galilee and different parts of Judea, and he and the disciples walked to all these different synagogues on the Sabbath. And the disciples would get hungry and would pick ears of corn and eat as they walked along. And this totally outraged the Pharisees. Verse 24. Then the Pharisees said to him, look at them. They are doing which is not lawful on the Sabbath. But what law were they talking about? They weren't talking about God's law, were they? No, they were talking about Jewish law. That's the only law that they taught. Not God's law. So what was Jesus' answer to them? Let's read verses 25 to 28. Verse 25. And he said to them, have you ever read what David did when he was hungry and need of food? He and those with him. Verse 26. How in the days of Abiathar, the high priest, he entered the house of God and he ate the showbread, which is not lawful to eat except for the priest, and also gave it to those who were with him. Verse 27. And he said to them, the Sabbath was made for men, not man for the Sabbath. 28. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath. So what is this doing? This is showing us that we need to use common sense to make righteous judgment concerning keeping the Sabbath holy. The Bible is full of examples that help us to make decisions that will be pleasing in God's sight. Not worrying about what is pleasing to me. We don't need to go ask man what they think. We need to go to our Bible and read what God says, and read his example, and study his example. And then, and only then, will we be able to keep the Sabbath the way God wants us to. As I was working on the sermon, I couldn't help but think that it was time when Pat and I lived in Tuscumbia, Missouri, a number of years ago. We owned a small farm in that area, and we were good friends with our neighbor who owned an Angus beef cattle farm right beside me. And we used to help each other, we build fence together, we do a lot of things together. And so we really got to know him quite well. And his name was Mr. Henley. Now, Mr. Henley was really a great man. And he was a very religious man. And he would attend Sunday school every every single Sunday morning. And then he would stay for church. And then he'd go back that night for evening service. On Tuesday, it was off to prayer meeting. On Wednesday, it was Bible study. And then, in addition to all this, he would visit church members during the week. And when many times they would be out doing projects for widows. You know, if they needed something, help on building a room for their house, or whatever it was. And, you know, I don't think he was a minister. I'm not even sure if he was a deacon. But I remember telling Pat, don't you wish the members of God's church had the same zeal in serving God's people as Mr. Henley had for his church? And look around, I'm sure, especially Manny has been here 50 years, I imagine he could give you many, many examples of people that he wished had the zeal of Mr. Henley in God's church. The reason I mention this is Mr. Henley thought he was pleasing God. Even though he was keeping Sunday instead of Sabbath, and he was keeping all of the pagan holidays instead of God's holy days, his human nature had convinced him that he was pleasing God in all he did. He was sure, there was not a shadow of a doubt, that God was going to take him to heaven, doing all he could do. So, we've got to remember that even though we have God's Spirit to guide us, which Mr. Henley did not have, we still have human nature, just like he did. Just like Mr. Henley. Our human nature can make us think that we are pleasing God by the way we're keeping the Sabbath, even if we are. The only way we can be sure that we're keeping the Sabbath pleasing to God is by studying God's Word, praying for His guidance, comparing our actions to His Word. Remember, it doesn't matter what we think. And that's one of the hardest things I think for a man to do. You know, because we tend to think we're right, even when we can be very wrong. And we need to keep telling us. It doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what God thinks. You know, I have an analogy to Pat came up with, and I thought it was great, so I want to share it. She said, have you ever given someone something that you really treasured, either to use or to keep? And maybe it was a great book, or a piece of your favorite sheet music, or a favorite tool, or some piece of clothing. And the trouble was, they didn't treasure it like you did. And when you they gave it back if they borrowed it, or you went over and saw it at their home, if it was something you had given to them. And you see it's been all broken and tore up. You know, how did it make you feel? It made you feel maybe not even just hurt, but maybe just wish, why did I ever give it to you? So, let's apply this to Christ. He made us the Sabbath day. He made the Sabbath for us. He gave it to us as a gift. And He wants us to cherish this gift. He really does. He wants us to realize how precious the Sabbath is to Him. How meaningful it was to Him, and how meaningful it needs to be to us. He even put into His instruction book, the Bible, the way He wants us to keep and take care of it. So shouldn't we be doing everything we can to keep this great gift of the Sabbath just the way He wants us to keep it? How do you think it feels when He sees us keeping His special day our way and not his? In conclusion, I hope these things we've gone over have been helpful. You know, there are so many different ways to keep the Sabbath. But the main thing is for us to remember is that we need to keep the Sabbath pleasing to God, not to anyone. That needs to be our total focus. We need to adjust to the circumstances in our lives and those of others whom we are involved. When we come together in fellowship on the Sabbath. We need to meet in love, in acceptance, not judging, not criticizing one another. We need to be helping and praying for each other, to be thankful for each other, to be praying no matter what they did, that if there's something wrong, they will repent so we can see them in the kingdom someday. That should be the way we should feel about any brother or any sister in God's church, regardless of what they have done to us. We are not the judge then. God is the judge. You know, we judge, God wants to judge whether they're doing evil or not. Final judgment will be with God. So they just need our prayers. They're doing the wrong thing. They really need our prayers. Ask for God's Spirit to be with you, to help us and to guide us. Let us do everything we can to make the Sabbath an honor. Not just for ourselves. Not just for ourselves. But for everyone, for each other. When we come to Sabbath, our goal should be to try and make the Sabbath a greatest delight for each and every one of us. Let's just rejoice now in God's holy Sabbath. With that, we can stand and sing a final song, and then I'll ask Manny to come up and give a final closing prayer.
I'm not going to do it, he's going to do it.
Oh, he's going to give the closing prayer? That's good. Okay, that's great.
If not, if he doesn't do it right, I'll fire him.
Okay, let's all stand.
Let it be the first and last
39.
time.
Page 39. Page 39. God will take care of you.
Thank you for me being around all my friends that I have here. In the name of Jesus Christ, who was my Lord and Savior, I pray.